So Ben and I were talking 10 days ago. Today is also the celebration of life for Susan LaRue. So I will not be here very long when service is over, because I need to get there. And the two of them have been so inspirational for me, truly inspirational. That's what we're here for, right? To show up for each other, to support each other. And as I had the honor and the privilege of walking with both of these lights through this journey that we make in this thing called life, they lived it so fully, both of them. Just lived it so fully. A month ago, Ben was in Seattle singing, doing the thing that he was called to do. So my talk today is, who have you come here to be? Who have you come here to be? And all too often, it takes something like the word, the experience of cancer, or as in Susan's case, ALS. It takes that, something, to sort of invite you to step into the truth of actually who you have come here to be. And so my question as I sat with all of this yesterday and been sitting, I mean, you guys know I've shared, my dear friend Joe made his transition. It's been a rough 2019. The question that kept coming to me is, what am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? What are the things that I am not stepping into, that I know I have been called to come here to be, that I am not embracing fully? And last week I shared some of why we don't, right? Why it is that we resist standing in who we have come here to be fully and powerfully. And I posed the question, what would your life be like if there was no one and nothing against you? And both Susan and Ben sort of illuminated. Susan's ALS slowly but clearly paralyzed her. She went from being this active, dynamic woman to someone who literally could do nothing for herself, including moving her head. And yet, she and I would sit there together, and she was so at peace because she knew who she had come here to be. She knew what her priorities were. She knew what mattered to her. She knew what she valued, and what she valued was sometimes as simple as being able to see the trees outside of her window. They brought her such joy to see her trees. I'd call her and I'd say, "How are you?" And she said, I'm staring at my trees and I'm filled with such peace. That's who she came here to be. Someone who showed up in gratitude, somebody who, even in the midst of something that is so challenging, the pain, the lack of control, all of that, she honestly anchored something so beautiful and so powerful. She did not see her life as if there was anything against her. What she saw and lived into. Now, did she fall off of that? Absolutely. Were there days when she was in so much pain? Were there days when she was angry and frustrated? Of course. But she kept reminding herself, who do I want to be? This life is so precious. Who do I want to be in it? And all too often, this is what we think life is. There's something big and scary coming for us. Everything we're seeing out there is out to get us, is working against us in some way, some shape, or some form. This enemy territory is the thing that stops us in our tracks. This enemy territory is the thing that allows us to get complacent in our life. This enemy territory is the thing that stops us from fully stepping out, from stepping forward, knowing that the road will rise up to meet us. When we say yes, a way is made. When we say yes, it shows up. Now, it may not look the way we think it's going to look, but a way arises. And this is our work, to continually keep moving past this idea that there is an enemy out there. Or, as we are in this, if you've been in this teaching for a while, maybe it's that the enemy is in here. Either way, there is something that is acting as an impediment to you showing up in the way that you are called to fully show up and be in the world. So I love this picture because we're always going to have ourselves in the view. We can't get ourselves out of the view, no matter how hard we try, no matter how hard we work at it. We're always going to be in the view. Now the question is, now scientifically, right, this is called the observer effect. The observer effect. And it is where the eye is seeing something. We think it's our eye seeing something, but really, it's the eye that is seeing it. And we have a lens, we have a filter, we have something that is impeding. Now that filter could be the story. I have ALS and my life sucks. That becomes a filter. Or, I have ALS and look at how surrounded I am by family and loved ones who are caring for me. I have ALS and look at how it has enabled me to transform my relationship with my family and with the world around me. One is an awareness of our divinity anchoring us. The other is an awareness of our fears and our lack and our not enoughness. So who are you really? I mean, that's really the question. Who are you, really? Who do you understand yourself to be? We think we know ourselves, and for some of us, we do. We practice, we look, we see, we're inquiring, we're seekers. I mean, that's the thing about this teaching that I love, is that we are a community of seekers. So we're seeking, and we want to know more about who we are. And yet, we all have our blind spots. We all have that place, that space, right back there, that we just can't, no matter how many times I try to catch it, it's still back there. And so it's the mirror that helps us see, right? You know, when you go to the hair salon and they're like, here you go, now you can see the back of your head, and they give you the mirror. The mirror is each other. My interactions with you, my relationships with you, illuminate for me what I can't see about myself. So who are you really? All too often, who we think we are is what we have or we don't have. That's who we think we are. Or we think we're what we do. That's big, right? And what I do. And that may be like, I show up and I'm in service to the world. You are not what you do. You are not what you have or what you don't have. The truth of who you are is who you have come here to be. And that is what will anchor you through everything. That is what will enable you to meet cancer and ALS and loss and death and pain and sorrow and wounding. That is what will enable you to meet that experience in this amazing, wonderful thing we call life. But to meet it with an equanimity, with with an awareness of who we truly are. Who have you come here to be? And no one else has come here to be what you have come here to be. No one else is that perfect, unique constellation of beingness that you are. Through each of us individually, something magnificent and unique and powerful is seeking to express. Are you allowing yourself to truly own your amazingness, your marvelousness, your incredibleness? Are you truly stepping in to who you are called here to be? And sometimes we don't know who we're called here to be until we get a sense of who we're not supposed to be. So you remember my story from last week where I went to City Hall and I had that whole interaction with a computer, right? And that computer was out to get me. I was not showing up in the way that I wanted to really be. I was aware of it at the time. I was sitting there and I'm going to when the woman was sitting next to me and I was like, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And a part of me was going, DeeAnn, let it go. I was like, yeah, I can't let it go, right? And there's a part of me that's aware that this is not who I'm called to be. This was not my frustration with that computer program, and my fear of looking like an idiot was not this woman's problem. And yet I was somehow trying to loop her in. We do that, right? I wanted to loop her into my story. I wanted to loop her into this idea that enemy territory really existed. I wanted her to be part of that with me. She wasn't having any of it, which I loved, right? She wasn't having any of it, but I kept trying. But I was aware on some level that that was not who I have come here to be. And then, of course, I could have beat myself up about that, right? I'm a minister. I'm supposed to know better. I was not acting in my most ministerial, shiny, lovely, amazing self, right? I was coming from a place of reactivity. So in those moments, when you're not, so we would call this in the cue process, we would call it being on your cue card. Those qualities, who you've decided you've come here to be, that means you're on your card. I'm showing up on my card. I'm showing up as love. I'm showing up as patience. I'm showing up as clarity. I'm showing up as vision. I'm showing up as leadership. I'm showing up as compassion. And in those moments when we fall off our card, we have this opportunity to realign ourselves. Literally go back to our card. What did I forget about myself that I could have brought to this situation, that I could have activated within myself, so that I could have shown up in the way that I want to show up? And then in this process, you actually get to rewrite it. You actually get to rewrite the story as if you showed up on your cue card, as if you did show up as your shiniest, best, most amazing self. And in that process, we start to heal from the judgment and the way we whip ourselves. And I love it because this process, they call it awareapy. It's not therapy, it's awareapy. Because ultimately, it's all about becoming aware. Who am I really? Who do I want to show up as really? And when I forget, I get to hold, I'm going to skip ahead. I'll come back to those. We have to hold ourselves in compassion, right? It is so important that we hold ourselves in that compassionate space, because that enables me to then see you from a compassionate space. So the healing that's happening in me becomes a healing that's happening within all of us. And as far as I'm concerned, that's who we've all come here to be, right? That is a thread that all of us have, that we are here to love and be loved. And that's going to show up in such an amazing, dazzling, different constellation of light for each of us. But that thread that we are here to love and to be loved, that is the constant. So I flipped through it. I'm not going to go back. There's 3 different ways that we see the enemy, right? We see it as an enemy outside of us. We see it as me, How many people in here can identify with that? I'm my own worst enemy, right? And then we also have how our past is our enemy. How the things that happen to us in our past somehow work against us, somehow have set us up in some way, that we have to always struggle against it. So the process, the Q process workbook and it's 3 weeks. So the first week, we're focusing on the enemy that's out there. And then the second week, we're focusing on the enemy that I am to myself. And then the third week, we're focusing on how the past shows up and the woundings of the past and how those impact us. How in that moment, as a just turned, because I think it was actually on my birthday that I was there, just turned 54-year-old sitting there in that chair, how all of a sudden I was back in 3rd grade. That was my 3rd grade self going, oh my God, she's gonna think I'm stupid. That was not my adult understanding of who I am. That was an old story that just took place, took root. And that's another piece we're gonna work with, because I've talked about how fast this is, right? 2 seconds. Our system goes from calm, neutral, everything's fine, to my life is at risk, because that's what it feels like. In 2 seconds, all those hormones, all that stuff that gets triggered in our brain and in our nervous system. So part of this process is about how do we stop the hijack that can happen? And it's all comes back to, who are you called to be? Who have you come here to be? And are you clear about it? Do you have clarity around who you've come here to be? Or is it just sort of this general idea? Do you really know what is yours and yours alone to do right now? Now, the beautiful thing about this process is it will change. I've done this 3 times. I go back, I look at my cue cards from all of them, and there's things that are constants, and there are things that have changed, because guess what? I'm changing. And as a divine aspect of the allness that is, all of it is available to me. All of it is something I can access and turn on in a more powerful and conscious way. All of this is about consciousness. All of this is about healing. Ultimately, it's deep, deep healing work. So whether you take the class or not, I'm going to invite you to be clear with yourself. Spend some time. Who am I called to be? Really? What does that look like? What do those qualities look like? And when you find yourself in enemy territory, think about, what could you be bringing to this situation that you forgot you had? Because that's all that's happening in that moment. You forget that you have that available to you. I am who I have come here to be. I am the I am. This is the whole point of everything. To live into the divinity that we are more fully, more powerfully. To not allow something like ALS or cancer derail our capacity to continue showing up in who we are called to be. Ben never let it stop him and his voice and his singing and his faith in song and in music to move and to heal. So what is yours to do in all of this? You get to sit with that. You get to sit and get clear. I am. Who have you been called to be right now? Let's take this into our time of meditation.